So also within Islam, now you see in fundamentalist Islam, they're still practicing these flesh sacrifices. If you go to during the period of the great pilgrimage every year, and they have when the Hajj or whatever they call it, the people all go to. They say that the plane just runs with blood. I mean, they sacrifice tens of thousands of goats and camels, and just so many. I mean, just thousands, tens of thousands of animals, unbelievable numbers, hundreds of thousands of animals, just unbelievable numbers of animals during that time. And we could see that this was also the story about Lord Buddha, that this was very going on just like this at the time of 500 BC in northern India, in that part of the world. The same thing was going on. Anyway, I know what I was talking about. So I was talking about with Lord Jesus. So that actually the Christian understanding of the difference between the Old Testament period and the New Testament period is that one of the big messages that the Christians have always gotten out of it is that Jesus Christ is the Lord Himself is the all-sufficient original all-sufficient sacrifice. That no other sacrifices need to be, nothing should be done. The Lord's done it all Himself, and therefore, and now that I know I was trying to relate that to the Nazarites also. The Nazarites in the Jewish tradition, they would not participate in the sacrificial system because it was their understanding that the rest of the body of Judaism at large was somewhat wrong about it. They didn't have it right. They were misunderstanding, and so they didn't participate in those sacrifices. And it's well known that the Nazarites were ahimsa. They didn't eat fish or eggs. And of course, it mentions the Essenes, it mentions the Nazarites in of course Gnostic literature and so forth. There's so much information about the Essenes and all that, but actually it mentions in the New Testament itself that the Christians were related to the cult of the Nazarenes. So this business about the Christians were the Essenes, or Christians were this bunch of that bunch, or some other bunch. It says right in the Shastra itself which group they were, and it's also easy to tell from all the internal evidence in the Scripture, because here you have a Scripture that is obviously Scripture of the Nazarites, because who are their heroes going all the way into the Old Testament? They're all Nazarites. John the Baptist is a Nazarite. So the Old Testament, New Testament is a scripture of the people who held the Nazarites in the highest esteem as their saints and their prophets. And the Nazarites are absolutely the Narayana cult of Krishna or Vishnu worship amongst the Jewish people there. I'm sure they had so many other different groups, just like in Vaishnavism in India. You have so many different schools and different groups and rites and so forth going on at the same time. But those were definitely the Narayana cult. Well, there is evidence that at some periods, I don't know about right then, but at some periods in the pre-Christian era, some of the temples did have, if not actual statuary icons, a lot of paintings, wall paintings in them, with nagas and all kinds of, amazing forms. But that's very problematic because the sources for that, some are extremely hostile regarding it, and they may have been also they may have been apostate or heretical groups of Jews too. So you can't really say, whether they were, whether it was bona fide worship or not. And even if the Jews themselves didn't make the murtis and didn't worship the murtis, it has been as I said, very well established by so many ancient sources that lots of people identified that form of Zeus or Jupiter, Ammon, Sabazios, or Cronus, or Saturnus, or Zervan, the Zoroastrian Zervan, with Yahweh. There is absolutely no question that the people at the time, we're talking in centuries prior to Christ, over a number of centuries, over a long period of time, that people identified that form with the God of the Old Testament. And like I said, even with on the negative side of it, even the Gnostics who considered him a demon or a dangerous demigod or something. So, whether there were actually synagogues that had Murtis of Narahari in them, I'll never know. Probably. But it's not necessary to come up with such a thing. All we have to have is the witness of so many different ancient Mediterranean sources identifying over and over and over again Yahweh Sabaoth with this form of the deity. And then we have the scriptural accounts. We know that he was the patron of the Israeli army, because over and over again in the Old Testament, whenever you find his name, he's there, and he's leading the people out and so forth. He's the so anyway. Anyway, but Jesus was, according to much of Christian tradition, Jesus put an end to the Old Testament sacrificial system. And, a lot of Christians, of course, primitive Christianity, the saints, the fathers of the early church, like the Platonists and so forth before them, like the Nazarites, they were already sattvic. They were already practicing ahimsa and being, abstaining from flesh foods. But many of them give, when they talk about reaching, perfection, they mention, they evoke the whole business about Jesus being last sacrifice. You see. Because the whole thing was, Jews couldn't eat anything that wasn't sacrificed to God, right? So if they were eating flesh, it had to be sacrificed. So if Jesus put an end to the Old Testament flesh sacrificial system, then that has a certain implication. Then there's the other side of the thing too, where Peter had the dream about all of the different beasts being shown in terms of his quandary was over when he was traveling and preaching and engaged with so many different people, how about the eating part, taking food and so forth in different places, and he's had a vision where a cloth was lowered that had every kind of creature in it, and plant and vegetable and everything, and the Lord told him, eat it, take it and eat it. And his realization was that what has been offered to God was purified, and that if he was running into people that were actually making offerings to God in different places and they were offering flesh, that he should not consider, because they aren't Jewish and that it wasn't being offered according to the Jewish sacrificial system, that whatever was offered to God was to be considered clean and not to be considered unclean in the Jewish sacrificial sense, like unkosher, so to speak.
I thought that that had nothing, a lot of Christians believe that had nothing at all to do with food or eating at all, but because it had to do with the story that when he came down from the roof, there were these two men waiting for him, and they were non-Jews, and it was supposed to be telling him that he should preach to the non-Jews, but that it actually had nothing at all to do with food or eating or what he should eat.
Gentile.
Preaching to the Gentiles.
Yeah, preaching.
Almost all.
Yeah.
As far as I know, all Christians, that story is is directly connected to that. And the way it's narrated in the Bible makes it pretty evident that it's connected to that.
Are you talking about the fellow that was lowered down through the roof? Are you talking about that past time, or you're talking about the one with the dream?
The dream was the animal. It was cloth connected on four corners.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was lowered down.
Yeah.
And opened up, and he saw all the different
Yeah, yeah.
types of.
Yeah. Well, they do associate it with that way because, again, it has the old business about Judaizing, the question of whether the people should be circumcised or not before you can preach to them about Jesus. Well, in this case, the question was, the issue that it was focusing on was the issue of whether kosher or not, whether you could go take a meal, whether you could go fellowship and eat a sacramental meal with somebody who didn't observe kosher law. See, so that was, however, of course, that was all involved, whether you're preaching to the Gentiles or not, whether you're just staying in the family of the Jews where the people that you're going to be fellowshipping with are obeying kosher law or not. So it's an extension of the same meaning of the same thing.
But what I mean, other than, like you were saying before, rejecting purity into world religions which attend this movement. My brother's a minister. He's got his own Mennonite church, and he'll quote, any number of things from the Bible and say, no, so you see, it's perfectly all right for me to read. And anything he quotes, I'll tell you, but they're talking about offering that to God. You don't offer an animal to God. All you do is go buy meat, and we think it's so terrible over in India or wherever these places are, where they have these huge sacrificial slaughters. The blood runs in the streets. If we opened up the slaughterhouses and had all the blood that's running in every day in the streets.
Right.
I mean,
sure, the primitive who goes and kills something with his own hands or with an arrow or a stick or a club or something, and says his prayer, or the Muslim who butchering 50 heifers for the family get together. I mean, they are much better situated than the person who is just simply,
commercial slaughterhouse.
living like they're God, living like they're independent, that there's no reaction and no care, they have no consciousness at all. And some consciousness is certainly better than no consciousness of what's going on in that respect. Being saved is entirely different from being perfected. And within Islam, amazingly, you'll see even within fundamentalist Islam, this is quite an astounding thing. Like this wonderful, I think it's called the Hadith, collection of stories, traditional stories on the lives of the saints, Muslim saints. And these persons are so extraordinary. I mean, just incredible, great saints. You'd love to hear these stories, just relish them so much. And you even see where so many persons are, they don't even eat anything, any meat, fish, or eggs. They're very simple, very sattvic life. Like they come to that realization. Also, amongst the Sufis, so many people that don't eat, meat or fish or eggs. The Sikhs, again, are a Muslim Vaishnava hybrid, and I've never met a Sikh that wasn't a staunch vegetarian. And these people, they used to have this whole huge part of the army. The British, the Sikhs were notorious for being the most ferocious. The British wanted them so much for them to be on their side, and just very ferocious people. But on the other side of it, that's one of the big uprisings, big fights that they had, was that at one point the British government started using cow fat for greasing the bullets for loading or some such thing like that. And the army people had to hold the bullets in their mouth at some point. They'd take a bunch of bullets out and put them in their mouth, and then when they had to load fast and stuff like that, it's like another hand. They needed it. And they wouldn't put the bullets in their mouth because they had cow fat on them. And there was a huge rebellion, uprising, so much killing, they refused, they wouldn't fight, and then they turned on the British and they said, what are you doing to us? We're not going to put this. So, they were very, because they didn't want to put some cow lard in their mouth. So anyway, no. And also, of course, we see in Christianity great saints beside the fact that the rules of order, the first Christian rules of order, were encouraged abstinence, flesh abstinence. They'll never use the term vegetarian in Catholicism, because the idea is that you're abstaining from something. You could eat it and still be saved. See, it doesn't have to do with being saved, because God can ultimately save you from the material world, even if you're committing this sin. But you can't. That perfection is something different kinds of perfection. You see, and so for certain saints that are certainly that they're striving for certain kinds of perfection, that abstinence from flesh eating. That's how they'll use the term abstinence. Abstinence from wine, abstinence from gambling, abstinence from sex, which is lawful in marriage for a period of prayer. Abstinence from flesh eating, which may be lawful. God has said you can make this sacrifice, offer it to me, and so forth. But that abstinence is to be preferred if you want to perfect yourself in certain relationships with the Lord, that it's to be preferred. And so it's all there, a counsel to abstinence in the early church fathers, early church monastic tradition, and so forth. And then over time, the things kind of eroded. But it's all there very clearly in the early church. And even in orders where abstinence is not, or even in times and places where it's not really enjoined on devotees, you'll find over and over again that the great saints of different traditions will naturally, just by the the light of the Lord in their hearts, I guess, by developing wonderful sensitivity and compassion, they will just have a realization and they'll stop being involved in the unnecessary killing of things and causing of suffering to the living entities, just as that compassion and that perception develops in them.
In Malaysia, I found that most Buddhists eat meat.
Yeah.
They have 2 days a month they are vegetarian.
Yeah.
And the Buddhist monks also accept meat in their begging bowls.
Yes.
Which is, they say they're not killing the animal themselves.
Right.
It's the job of the butcher, and therefore we don't suffer any reaction.
Yeah.
For the killing of the animal.
Yeah. I was amazed, and it's so hard to find any place in India or Nepal where you could, outside of Prabhupada's temples or certain temples, or you can't trust it. The Hindus are all eating meat. And same thing in Nepal. The devotees catered the big executive committee meeting of the World Hindu Organization there, and the Universal Sanatana Dharma meetings. They were very appreciative because they knew they were getting pure sattvic foodstuffs offered to the Lord. It was hard to find any place else that they could get such foodstuffs. So.
But if the Buddhists in Malaysia understand what Buddha's mission was,
They say Buddha is the enlightened one, he's not God, but that you can also become enlightened.
I know, but specifically, his particular mission was to stop animal killing.
I don't know. Also, see, Malaysia, that whole band there is all permeated with the Theravadan form of Buddhism anyway. See, Northern Buddhism, we're talking about Nepal, Tibet, Sikkim, northern Afghanistan, China, Korea, and Japan. Those are the big strongholds of Mahayana Buddhism.
Mahayana is more prominent in Malaysia than Theravada. At least that's what they told me.
Well, there were some very early strongholds of Mahayana, for instance, in Cambodia. There were some kings, but unfortunately it's externally externally appear to be more Mahayana. Just like I was telling Mataji that in Sri Lanka, there, even though it is the headquarters of Theravada Buddhism, externally it looks like Mahayana Buddhism because all the temples have the Diwalis with the murtis of Vishnu in them and everything. So that there was a very early, very powerful Mahayana Buddhism throughout that part of the world, which can be demonstrated by the enormous Mahayana Buddhist centers, the archaeological ruins that are found there. But that the effect of Theravadan teachings has been so subversive throughout that whole lower area that the external form may be more Mahayana, but you're quite likely to run into a lot of this Theravadan philosophy underlying.
I was very amazed. I was simply amazed how the Chinese people respect their priests. Just simply amazed. In downtown Singapore, they had a Radha Krishna temple.
Yeah.
Next to it was a temple of Lord Buddha. That temple of Lord Buddha was packed.
Yeah.
Day and night. People,
Oh,
Chinese coming in and out. And in the Hindu temple next door, there was just a priest.
Yeah.
And the Chinese people would come by and offer their respects, come in and offer flowers to Radha and Krishna.
Yes. See,
They,
the Mahayana that you're talking about here, that's not the original, that is not the I'm not saying the original either, but excuse me, but that's not the intermediate indigenous form that was influenced by the Theravada. What you're talking about right there is very recent. It has to do with with the whole thing about Taiwan and everything. It has to do with how, just like the communists have forced all of the Tibetan Buddhists out of Tibet, they're all living down in their Dharmashala outside of New Delhi now. Okay, this very strong element of Mahayana Buddhism that you're talking about in Malaysia, talking about that's throughout that area, that's a very recent thing. It's only since the whole war, between the Maoists, between the communist Chinese and the free Chinese, that whole thing that happened just in our century with all of the free Chinese finally being pushed out to the south, and bringing their particular form of Chinese Mahayana Buddhism into, so that's the key to what you were observing there. Is yes, those Mahayana Buddhists, those are the
definition I was given of Mahayana by people themselves was that Theravada is more ascetic, more recluse, and Mahayana is more passionate, who's preaching.
Yeah.
To be compassionate upon people. And I was just amazed how they freely give.
Yes.
To their Watts.
Yes.
To their priests, and the priests are able to stay in the Wat and just do their meditation, do their service all day, and they don't have to worry about going out and making money. They teach and all this other things.
Very highly valued members of society. Society is still God-centered. That's that very strong, like in Tibet too. The people loved their monks and supported their monks.
And the monks don't even preach to the people, which is amazing. That they don't even preach to the people, yet the people respect them so much. And the king of Thailand, King Bhumibol.
Yes, he's quite an extraordinary person.
He spent several years in the monastery himself.
Yes.
Before becoming king. So although he was educated in the West, he's keeping intact the system of Vedic system, which actually originally Vedic.
Yeah.
To respect the monk, to respect the priest.
Now, see, he just like the king of Nepal is thought to be an incarnation of Vishnu. King Bhumibol is thought to be an incarnation of Lokeshwar, as far as I'm understanding. So he actually, the Buddhists in Thailand they are still carrying on somewhat their Mahayana tradition. In Cambodia is pretty much dead. in other words, in Cambodia, when it was at the time of Jayavarman and all the building of Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom, I mean, that was strictly Krishna. That, matter of fact, is a perfect example of how it is Krishna, Lokeshvara worship as Krishna is Vaishnavism, just in another language. They have the wonderful layout of the temple complex, and on the wall running in and the wall running out, with the temple as the like Mandara Mountain in the middle, you have the pastime of the demigods, the demons churning the ocean, and all the demigods on this side holding onto the body of Vasuki or Anantashesha, and then the demons on the other side holding onto the Lord's body, and so that the whole conception of the thing is that the temple itself is like the mountain of the world, and it's being churned by this Anantashesha, who's acting as the rope, and they're very wonderful Vaishnava murtis found there. All kinds of wonderful Vaishnava murtis, and also many the wall carvings are all pictures from the Puranas, and it's very, very wonderful. But what happened was there that the Theravadan came in. The Mahayana was there, and then during that time very prominent. And then later Theravadan came in and became more prominent. And part of the problem about Theravada and Gnosticism and all this other kind of thing is it's just like how Gnosticism creeps into Christianity, has crept into Catholicism, because they're occult orders. They're these esoteric orders, you see. So this is the hidden wisdom, the occult knowledge, and all that kind of stuff, the initiates of the mysteries and everything. And so you have the strange thing that you hear. You have a person who is a practicing Catholic, and against all the teachings of the church, they're a member of some, Gnostic or Masonic or occult order. And that's why the church has always been totally against any kind of secret society. You run into these problems. In Greece, or Rome, the most extraordinary story about how the Roman leadership came to realize what was going on with this so-called cult of Dionysus, the horrible things that they were doing, that it was actually very prevalent already, and it crept into all levels of Roman society. People were going out engaging in these horrible activities, and it had spread and created a whole criminal underground in the Roman world that was related to this horrible cult. And it was a secret society, and being, persons of goodwill in the Roman leadership and everything, they're trying to be fair to everybody, religious freedom and all that kind of stuff. And they were allowing this they had rumors of it. And then finally a woman she escaped. I can't remember exactly what the story was, but she finally, someone was brave enough to come forward to reveal what was going on in this cult. And so they made some plans to try to actually uncover what was going on with the cult. And they finally did uncover it. And when they uncovered it, then they had to make so many laws to restrict the behavior of these people because it was so horrible. They found out, it was just like what they heard was not half as bad as how it really was. And it had totally pervaded, by the time they caught on to it, it had totally pervaded Roman culture all the way up to the highest levels. So it was one of these secret societies. There's that great danger there. So also, I've had the experience of reading so-called Mahayana texts that have been redacted by these hidden Theravadins, the wisdom schools and so forth. You're reading along these very nice Mahayana texts, and they're talking about the worship of the Lord and so forth, and then you get into the higher, so-called higher realizations, and all of a sudden you hit a point where the teacher is now saying, well, all of that is all just a mental projection, and really it's void, it's sunya. You're going along Mahayana, 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 and then boom, you hit this Theravadan doctrine. It's just the most stunning and devastating kind of thing. You can imagine what this would do to an innocent person who was a seeker, who didn't have some kind of historical perspective on this thing. I mean, talk about psychic shock therapy to take them along through years of meditation and worship of the Sri Murti of the Lord, and then to, in the very final moments of revelation, tell the person, well, now everything that you have learned and all of these realizations that you've had and all these visions you've had of the Lord, these are all projections of your own mind, and smashed to smithereens, everything that's left of the person's concept of an individual finite self or a supreme self, and leave them with nothing, and say, now this is actually what is nothing, sunya, void, nothing, nirvana, annihilation, extinguishment. And see, you run into that everywhere in Mahayana sources now. Whether they're in the north or in the south, you think someone's a Mahayana, they have all the external symptoms of Mahayana, they're worshiping like this and practicing like this, and then you read these literatures coming from them and so forth, and then you find out that actually they're like a wolf in sheep's clothing. They've got all the Mahayana symptoms, but that down deep inside, they're just like these New Age people. They talk about love of God, and they're all real nice, flowery, language of the Vedas thing again on the outside. But when you get down to the inside, the core of these New Age people, they're a bunch of Nazi racists. It's absolutely what they are. They really believe that Adolf Hitler was on the right track. They totally believe this Aryan race theory business. They're totally a bunch of atheists. They talk about God and Krishna and Jesus, everything all nice together, this beautiful world religions, unity, all this kind of stuff. And actually, their bottom line is that they want to destroy all bona fide religion. They want to replace it with material monism in the guise of so-called goddess worship, so-called original natural religion of mankind, is so-called goddess worship, which is just a material monism. See, they have no idea that the feminine is there in the spiritual realm. They totally identify feminine with matter, right? Yeah. It's just very dangerous, very sick business,
Thing in Washington, D.C. some months ago, women of the
Yeah.
spirit.
Yeah.
And the devotees put it on and invited all these other people to speak. And that's exactly what
Exactly.
women are presenting.
Yes.
We're all mother and we're all the supreme mother.
Yeah. It's just really bizarre. Because, see, they can't understand that feminine in the material world is just a reflection of the real feminine in the spiritual world that doesn't have anything to do with matter at all, that there's such a reality of a totally spiritual feminine. They totally identify feminine with matter. And they assume that matter is ultimately all that there is. So this whole New Age thing, it's really perverse. It's so connected with Hitler's tantric, left-hand tantric, their whole Nazi Satanist Wicca, witch, the whole kind of left-handed feminine worship.
How do you suggest that we proceed with regards to our interfaith movement, since it seems that we're getting involved with a lot of the New Age groups and so on? I mean, do you have any comments or warnings?
Well, my own personal feeling is that we shouldn't do anything at all to encourage these people, and that we shouldn't solicit them necessarily. That we should put out very pure, clear, uncompromised Krishna Bhakti, just what Prabhupada has given, and however Bhaktipad wants to transmit that in a different cultural milieu, but that it shouldn't be compromised in any way, shape, or form. And those people who are in their hearts, who are sincerely looking for Krishna and want, they'll be attracted and they'll come to Krishna. And that we shouldn't waste our time and energy preaching to the faithless or the less intelligent. that is actually an offense for us to go out and to be soliciting people that have doctrines which are hostile to Krishna. These people are holding doctrines and having doctrines which it's not just that they don't know about Krishna, but their doctrines rule out the possibility that Krishna can be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they're out actually trying to teach the world that Krishna can't be God. That in fact, if every ounce of energy, dime, every minute of time that we spend out there wrangling with those rascals, we have misused when there are devotees desperate, waiting to hear, open hearts and open minds that are hungry for Krishna. They're waiting, simply waiting for us to spend that dime to get to them, to spend that minute with them. I had to really come to terms with this years ago. That's why I don't like spending any time with wrangling anybody anymore. Because over and over again, it happened to me that I'd spend 5, 10 minutes, an hour, or a couple of days, so many months of my life, I'd be involved in locked horns with people who actually had ideas that they were attached to that ruled out the possibility of Krishna being God, or ruled out the possibility of Radharani, ruled out the possibility of Balaram. They got some problem, some poverty of heart, I call it. Poverty of heart. It doesn't have to do with what they know or they don't know, because that can always be, you can always add to someone's knowledge. But what predisposes a person to being able to accept the knowledge or not, it comes from where they are in their heart. If they've hardened their heart, they don't want Krishna to be God. They don't want to hear the truth. Then I was always beating my head against the brick wall of some of these people. And I found over and over and over again that every ounce of energy that I spent with these people was taken away from somebody else that was just waiting, hungry. They wanted to hear the information. They wanted to hear they wanted me to get there. And I had so many graphic examples in my life of this happen, where someone who was ready and wanted Krishna didn't get Krishna because I was too tangled up over here, locked horns with these rascals. Then I was always finding myself always lamenting, why, oh, why did I spend any time with that rascal? Why, oh, why have I given him those books? He's just been a blasphemer. Why, oh, why? And always coming back to the position of hearing the Lord whispering in my ear, it's an offense to preach to the faithless or the less intelligent. I mean, you've got the faithful and the intelligent out there waiting for you. So you're doing a disservice. It's an offense, actually. And then I've got so many, I've been beat up and I've had so many bad problems that I can't come to conclusion. Another part of the problem is that when you, just like you were saying, Swami, earlier, it's exactly the same thing, time and circumstance. That when you're preaching to someone that's beyond what their capacity, they can't handle it. My experience also was, I'm actually making this person more offensive because I'm agitating this person's mind. And this person is now committing so many offenses to me and so many offenses to Krishna. And this person is now beating me up. This person is trying to shoot at me. This person is trying to strangle me. This person is in my face. This person is tearing up the Lord's books. This person is blaspheming God. Now that they've mounted a big attack, they're putting letters in the newspaper attacking, then actually I could have gone through this city, I could have gone through this time, I could have gone through this whole situation and spent all my time with devotees, giving them what they need to know to edify them and build them up in their faith and help them in their devotional service. But instead, I've come into town, I've had all my time wasted by this guy. This guy is now on all the devotees' case. He's on my case. He's been agitated. He was a sleeping lion. He was a big, dumb, sleeping beast there. And I've come and waken him up, and now he's attacking all the devotees of the Lord, I should have passed through the town silently, let the sleeping dog lie. I should have given the devotees what they had a right to expect from me. Instead, I went over, I kicked the sleeping dog, and now he's fighting me. And I wonder why I'm getting beat on and shot at and all this. Because I'm flying in the face of these rascals. There's a reason why. Prabhupada, I've heard, it's said that people get the guru that they deserve. Now, I'm not talking about the vast majority of the innocent. The demigods and the demons are fighting. There's a battle going on here for the so-called innocent, the vast majority who are in the middle area somewhere. So for that vast majority of people, which we do still have access to, you simply put the Lord there. You put the Lord within reach. Always be bold to put the Lord within reach. But don't kick the sleeping dog, and don't go and put Krishna out in the face of the blasphemers, and don't, for God's sake, don't give Lakshmi to these people, don't empower these people, don't give them a place to speak, don't give them ways to spread further poison. I had a good example of this, very wonderful parish priest who just is most loving, accepting, generous person, full of Christian charity, doesn't want to think ill of anyone. And he was always letting the Seventh-day Adventists put their magazines on the book rack in the foyer of our church. And right in those Seventh-day Adventist magazines, they're saying every kind of blasphemy about the church. And then I kept telling him, Father, you can't do this. These people are, this poison. They're publishing poison. He said, oh, I can't believe that. It can't be that bad, I mean, he's never read this stuff. See, I've read this stuff. I've read over 23 volumes of Seventh-day Adventist teachings. You see, I know where they're coming from, and going to. And then, where their teachings lead, they're very careful how they lead people along with this doctrine upon doctrine until they build up this whole big, thing. And but he could never see it. He could never understand how anybody would actually want to hurt the church. He's just such a dear sweet person. But
doesn't it make it different?
The church, yeah. But anyway, but that's the point. How many people? I mean, you don't want to empower your adversary. Yeah.
Like you were saying before, that the whole method, the whole activity of the Vaniac forces now is simply to keep the devotees separated from each other.
Yes.
And the subtle way to do that is this way, to go in among the devotees,
yes.
as if you're devotees,
yes.
trying to get
exactly.
everybody together,
exactly.
just to separate them from
Yes.
But how do you discern, like for instance, we're getting involved for instance, Elizabeth Clare Prophet.
Yeah.
I mean,
I personally
how
think
do
she's
we know
sincere.
that
I think
she's
she's
sincere. Isn't
yeah.
sincere?
I think she's probably a wonderful person, and maybe a very great devotee of the Lord. I sincerely say that.
But
I think that she's.
How would we know to judge whether that's true or not?
Well, see, a person can be a great devotee of the Lord and be very sincere, and also be very badly informed. It's true, because we're operating on different levels. A person who has given their heart to God may not have given their mind to God. Now, this is difficult. This is true.
That's what you were saying. Keep ourselves pure.
Yes. You can't compromise. You don't get into their lingo. Don't get into their mindset. Don't play on their field. Their field is off the edge, of the abyss. When you're if it was my choice, I would say that the devotees should, as always, continue. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement is open for everyone, including the most fallen, not just the greatest intellectuals and saintly persons, but for everyone. The guy with the roll of toilet paper, right? Everyone. And we never want that nature of it to change. But that as far as that we should approach people who are in heterodox, non-bona fide, inauthentic, these little heresies, all these different little groups, we should approach them like we approach the guy with a roll of toilet paper or anyone else. We should approach them like we approach the unchurched. Because they are, in fact, unchurched. The spiritual leaders that they have are disconnected from the bona fide traditions. Therefore, the spiritual masters are unchurched. So we should approach them like unchurched people, and we should put everything out there for them, and we should trust that Krishna, that if they're true in their hearts and they're humble and submissive, even the leaders themselves, willing to learn, willing to know, like Elizabeth Clare Prophet, maybe, that she will, that whatever $10 problems she has will all be solved by the $1 million she gets from association with Bhaktipada and the reading of Prabhupada's books, and the chanting of Maha Mantra. And also all other persons, all followers, all these people out there. That should be one approach, but that our principal concern should be in preparing ourselves, perfecting ourselves, getting our act together, so that we can actually properly represent the incomparable treasures that are found in the tradition of the Brahma, Brahma Sampradaya and the Gaudiya from Lord Chaitanya, Sampradaya, Vaishnavism, that we